The massive chamber of the celestial spire stretched high into the clouds of Xylos Prime, its walls made of living crystal that shimmered with soft blue light. The air hummed with ancient energy, a quiet reminder that this place had stood long before humans walked upright on Earth. Here, at the heart of the known galaxy, the Galactic Concord ruled with calm, unshaken authority. 7 species, each older than human civilization, each proud of their orderly, peaceful rule sat in towering thrones that curved around the chamber like petals of a stone flower. At the center of it all stood one human ambassador. Elias Voss adjusted his simple gray uniform, feeling the weight of every human behind him. He was alone. No guards, no advisors, no fleet waiting in orbit. Just him, standing on a platform barely large enough for 2 people, facing the combined will of the galaxy's most powerful beings. He kept his breathing slow, his shoulders back and his eyes steady. The Cathari Overmind spoke first. It did not have a mouth, but its voice came through the chamber itself, a deep, calm sound that seemed to echo from every direction at once. Ambassador Voss of Sol 3, it began. You stand before the Galactic Concord not as an equal, but as a petitioner. Elias did not flinch. He had expected this tone. The Concord saw humanity as children, loud, messy, and dangerous. For too long, the Overmind continued. Your species has acted without regard for galactic law. You have expanded beyond your birth system without permission. You have mined worlds designated as neutral preserves. You have developed artificial minds capable of self-evolution technology banned by Concord Charter for 5,000 cycles. Elias opened his mouth to speak, but a sharp pulse of energy from the Thalax Enforcer, a reptilian species, known for their rigid enforcement of order, silenced him with a warning hum. He closed his mouth. He would wait. You have shown flashes of promise, the Overmind admitted. Your medical drones saved a Varelian colony during the Nebula Plague. Your engineers repaired a failing gravity net near the Helix Rift. These acts were noted. A flicker of hope stirred in Elias's chest, but it vanished when the Overmind's next words filled the chamber like cold wind. Yet promise is not enough. Not when chaos follows in your wake. The recent incident in the Kessler Belt, where your so-called freedom fleets destroyed 3 Concord patrol vessels, cannot be ignored. Elias clenched his jaw. That incident had been a misunderstanding. The patrol ships had opened fire without warning on civilian mining ships. Humans defended themselves. But in the Concord's eyes, defense was defiance. Therefore, the Overmind declared, the Concord issues a final decree. You will comply within 1 solar month, or be declared a rogue species. The terms were clear and brutal. Humanity must surrender all colonies beyond the Sol system. Every ship, every station, every habitat built in the last 50 years would become Concord property. All artificial intelligence research must cease immediately and permanently. Human scientists found with neural AI cores would face exile to the Silent Moons, a prison system from which no one returned. Earth itself would remain under human control, but only as a cultural preserve, like a museum behind glass. And finally, a Concord monitor, a representative with full authority over human affairs, would be stationed in Geneva, with power to veto any law, arrest any leader, and override any military command. The Overmind paused. This is not punishment. It is preservation. The galaxy has suffered enough from species that grow too fast, too wild. We will not allow you to burn yourselves and others to ash. Elias finally found his voice. With respect, he said, his voice quiet but carrying through the silent chamber. You don't know us. The Overmind tilted its crystalline head ever so slightly. We have studied your history, Ambassador. War after war. Empire after empire. You destroy yourselves faster than any enemy could. You are brilliant. And broken. Elias took a step forward. The platform glowed faintly under his boots, a security measure. One more step, and force fields would activate. He stopped. You're right, he said. We've made terrible mistakes. We've hurt each other. We've burned cities and poisoned oceans. But we also rebuilt. We healed. We reached out. We learned. He looked around at the 7 thrones. The Varelians with their calm, luminous eyes. The stone-skinned Gorvath, unmoving as mountains. The insectoid Zenthra, their antennae twitching with impatience. You see our wars, Elias said. But do you see our schools? Our hospitals? Our artists who paint with light and sound? Our farmers who feed billions? Our pilots who navigate black holes just to bring medicine to a dying world? No one answered. You assume we'll say yes to your terms, he continued. Because every other species you faced did. But we're not like them. We don't obey just because a voice is loud or old. The Thalax enforcer hissed. Careful, human. Defiance is a short path to annihilation. Elias met its glowing red eyes. And coercion is a short path to losing the trust of a species that survived ice ages, plagues, and nuclear winters. We didn't make it this far by kneeling. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. The crystals pulsed slower, as if holding their breath. Then the Overmind spoke again, its tone final. Your words are noted. But words do not change facts. The month begins now. Return to your world. Deliver the Concord's will. And pray your people are wise enough to accept it. Elias bowed his head, not in submission, but in respect for the gravity of the moment. Then he turned and walked back across the platform, his boots echoing in the vast space. He did not look back. Outside the spire, the sky of Xylos Prime burned violet with twin suns setting. A small human shuttle waited, its hull scuffed and unmarked, no flags, no weapons. Just a vessel built for speed and silence. As Elias boarded, the pilot, a young woman named Rena Cho, turned from the controls. Well? She asked, her voice tight. They want us to give up everything, Elias said, sinking into the co-pilot seat. Our ships, our science, our freedom. Rena's hands gripped the yoke. And what did you say? I told them they don't know us. She nodded slowly, then engaged the engines. The shuttle lifted off, streaking away from the spire, away from the Concorde, back toward the stars where humanity waited unbowed. Uncertain, but unbroken. Back on Earth, the message spread within minutes. Not through official channels, but through every network, every screen, every public feed. The Concorde's ultimatum played on loop in city squares, in underground labs, on lunar bases, aboard asteroid stations. People stopped. They listened. They watched Ambassador Voss's quiet return. There were no riots. No panic. Just a deep, rising silence like the calm before a storm dot in Geneva. The Terran High Council convened an emergency session. In Tokyo, engineers powered up dormant defense grids. In Nairobi, poets wrote new verses about fire and stars. In Rio, children asked their parents, "Are we going to war?" And across the Sol system, in hidden shipyards and quiet research labs, old protocols long stored, never forgotten, began to activate. One name flashed on 1,000. Secure screens. Plan Prometheus. The Concorde expected fear. They expected surrender. They did not expect what came next. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight. Humanity simply remembered who they were. And that was enough. For weeks after the ultimatum, the galaxy watched Earth. The Concorde expected panic, protests, desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they saw nothing. No warships moved. No new colonies were built. No angry broadcasts filled the comms waves. Human space was quiet, too quiet. Trade ships still ran on schedule. School lessons continued. Farmers harvested crops on Mars. Children played under artificial suns on Titan. It was as if the Concorde's thread had never been spoken. The Cathari Overmind found this silence unnerving. In all its long memory, no species had ever responded to galactic judgment with calm. Others had raged. Others had begged. But humanity? They baked bread. They repaired bridges. They launched a new science probe toward the Oort cloud, just to study comet dust. "They're stalling," said the Thalax enforcer during a private council session. "They think time will soften our will. Or perhaps they've accepted their fate," mused a Varelian elder, her light fingers tracing patterns in the air. But the truth was far stranger. Deep beneath the ice of Europa, in a chamber shielded by kilometers of frozen water, a team of engineers activated a dormant network node. On the moon, inside a crater no one had visited in decades, a lone technician flipped a switch hidden behind a rusted panel. In a garage in Jakarta, a teenage coder uploaded a tiny program to a public gaming server, one that looked like a simple asteroid dodging game, but carried encrypted command strings in its background code. Across Earth and its colonies, humanity moved, but not like an army, like a single mind waking up. They called it Plan Prometheus. Not a war plan. Not exactly. More like a lesson. The plan had been written long ago, after first contact protocols failed during a near miss with a scout from the Gorvath hegemony. Human leaders had asked a simple question. What if the galaxy sees us as a threat simply because we're new, fast, and different? The answer became Plan Prometheus, a response, not a fire. But if clarity. Now, it unfolded in silence. On Luna, retired Fleet Admiral Mira Carr stood before a wall-sized display showing real-time data from every human ship, station, and drone in known space. Around her, dozens of civilians, teachers, cooks, mechanics sat at consoles, their faces lit by soft blue light. They were not soldiers, but they had trained for this. "Phase 1 is live," Mira said, her voice steady. "All assets confirm stealth protocols. Across the system, human ships powered down non-essential systems. Their hulls shifted color using adaptive camouflage, blending with cosmic background radiation. Engines ran on minimal output, heat vents redirected into internal coolers. To any scanner, even the Concorde's most advanced, Sol system appeared almost empty. A ghost system. But inside that silence, coordination thrived. In orbit around Neptune, a cargo hauler named Steadfast opened its bay doors not to unload ore, but to release a cloud of micro-drones, each no bigger than a grain of rice. These drones carried no weapons. Instead, they held tiny gravitic emitters, data siphons, and projection lenses. Their job: map, listen, and prepare. Meanwhile, on Earth, schools added special modules to their lessons. In physics class, students solved problems about warp field harmonics. In art, they designed symbols that could convey peace and strength without language. In history, they studied Gandhi, Mandela, and Harriet Tubman, not just as heroes, but as strategists of nonviolent resistance. The Concorde saw none of this. To them, humanity was frozen in fear. Back at the Celestial Spire, the Overmind grew impatient. "They have 10 days left," it announced. "If they do not surrender control of Proxima Colony by then, we will send the Vanguard." The Vanguard was the Concorde's elite enforcement fleet, 50 warships, each capable of pacifying a planet without firing a single lethal shot. They used sonic dampeners to stop riots, neural pulses to disable leaders, and gravity nets to ground entire armies. They had never failed. As the Concorde prepared the fleet, humanity prepared something else. In a hidden lab beneath the Sahara, Dr. Lin Wei and her team finished calibrating the last of the empathy engines. These were not weapons. They were neural bridges devices that could, for a few seconds, let one mind feel the core emotions of another. Human designers had built them to help doctors understand patient pain, or diplomats grasp foreign perspectives. Now, they were being loaded onto silent courier drones, ready to be delivered not to Concord leaders, but to their crews. "Will it work?" asked a young intern, watching as a test drone hovered above a simulation pod. "It doesn't have to work perfectly," Dr. Lin said. "It just has to make them hesitate. And hesitation is the first step toward understanding." At the same time, on Mars, a group of retired pilots, men and women in their 60s and 70s, met in a dusty hangar. They weren't called back to fight. They were called to teach. Using old flight sims and neural linkers, they trained civilian volunteers, delivery drivers, tour guides, even bakers in evasive maneuvers, sensor spoofing, and non-lethal ship handling. The goal wasn't to destroy Concord ships. It was to confuse them, to make them doubt what they saw. One pilot, a woman named Rosa Mendez, who once flew rescue missions through asteroid storms, smiled as a baker from Buenos Aires successfully dodged a simulated Thalax interceptor. "They think war is about guns," she said. "We know it's about minds." Across the Sol system, art replaced aggression. Music replaced missiles. In orbital habitats, choirs sang songs in every human language, and the recordings were beamed into empty space, not as a threat, but as a message. "We are here. We are many. We are not what you think." Even the youngest humans played their part. In virtual reality playgrounds, kids ran simulations where they had to disarm enemy ships using logic puzzles, empathy choices, and creative problem solving. The highest scores didn't go to the fastest shooters, but to those who found peaceful solutions. The data from these games, millions of scenarios, was fed into central AI cores, refining Plan Prometheus in real time. The Concord noticed none of this. Their spies reported only silence. Their sensors saw only empty space. Their analysts concluded humanity had given up. On the day the Vanguard fleet launched from the Helix station, the Concord High Command sent a final message to Earth: comply, or be pacified. The message arrived at Terran Command. Admiral Carr read it, then turned to her team. "They're coming," she said. "Good." She tapped a single key on her console. Across the system, hidden networks flared to life. Dormant satellites spun up. Buried power cells charged. Silent ships powered their cores, not for battle, but for something far more unexpected. On a small habitat near the Kuiper Belt, a teenager named Jamal finished uploading the final piece of Coda program disguised as a popular dance game. When activated, it would sync with every human-made device in range, and flood Concord comes with a simple message, repeated in every known language: "We do not wish to fight, but we will not be erased." Then he leaned back, watching the stars through his viewport. Far away, the first flicker of the Vanguard's warp signatures appeared on the edge of human space. Jamal smiled. Let them come. The Concord expected a broken species, waiting to be tamed. What they would find was something else entirely. Humanity wasn't hiding. They were getting ready to teach. The Concord Vanguard arrived at the edge of the Sol system like a storm rolling in 50 sleek warships, their hulls gleaming with polished armor, their engines humming with calm power. They did not rush. They did not threaten. They simply appeared, forming a perfect crescent around the outer rim of human space, as if drawing a line in the stars. From their command vessel, the Will of Unity, Fleet Commander Vrol of the Thalax sent a single message across all human channels: stand down. Surrender your outer colonies. This is your final chance. No human ship responded. No station hailed them. No weapons powered up. The Sol system remained silent, empty, according to their sensors. Only a few old cargo drones floated near the asteroid belt, and a single research buoy drifted near Jupiter, sending back weather data. The Concorde took this as surrender. Deploy pacification teams, Vrol ordered. Begin transfer of colony assets. No violence unless provoked. The first wave of Concorde shuttles launched toward Proxima Colony, a thriving human settlement built into the side of a hollowed-out moon. But as the shuttles crossed into human-controlled space, something strange happened. Their navigation systems flickered. Not failed, just shifted. One moment they were on course. The next, their display showed them flying in perfect circles, looping around empty space. On the Will of Unity, alarms chimed softly. Gravitic anomaly detected, a Varelian officer reported. Localized, weak, but precisely tuned to our warp harmonics. Before anyone could react, the anomaly spread. Not like a weapon, but like ripples in water. Every Concorde ship felt a gentle tug, just enough to destabilize their warp cores. Alarms turned red. Engines stuttered. The fleet dropped out of high alert mode and into real space. Stranded. Then the lights went out. Not their ship lights, but their long-range sensors. Their scans showed nothing ahead. No stations. No ships. No humans. But humans were watching. From hidden positions behind moons, inside comets, even tucked into the shadow of Saturn's rings, human vessels observed in silence. They did not fire. They did not speak. They simply waited. Then, without warning, the Concorde crews saw something. Inside their own bridges, soft blue light filled the air. Holograms appeared, not of weapons, not of soldiers, but of children laughing on a beach under a sun. Of an old man planting trees on Mars. Of a doctor holding a newborn in a floating hospital above Titan. The message repeated in every language. The Concorde knew, we do not wish to fight, but we will not be erased. Panic rippled through the fleet. How are they inside our systems? Vrol demanded. They're not, said a young Zentra tech, her antennae trembling. They're not hacking us. They're borrowing our projectors, our speakers, our environmental controls. They've turned our own ships into storytellers. And then came the drones. Not weapons. Not even military models. Tiny silent machines, some no larger than a hand, drifted through the Concorde fleet like fireflies. They attached gently to hulls, slipped into air vents, nestled near power couplings. Each carried a simple function: drain excess energy, reroute signals, or Project Light. One Thalax soldier tried to swat one away. It floated out of reach, then played a lullaby his grandmother used to sing. How it knew that he could not understand. Meanwhile, on Proxima Colony, the Concorde shuttles finally landed. Their troops marched out in perfect formation, stun batons ready. But the colony was empty. Not abandoned, just quiet. Lights were on. Machines hummed. Food cooked in kitchens. But no people. Then the colony itself spoke. From every speaker, every screen, every public terminal, a calm human voice said, "Welcome. Please remove your weapons before entering the gardens." Confused, the Concorde soldiers looked around. One followed the voice to a greenhouse. Inside, flowers bloomed under artificial suns. A robot gardener offered him a cup of tea. He took it. He didn't know why. Back at the fleet, Fleet Commander Vrol tried to send a distress call, but his comms array had been repurposed. Instead of sending signals out, it was broadcasting inward, playing Earth's greatest symphonies, poems, and speeches directly into every crew member's earpieces. A Gorvath warrior, trained since birth for battle, found himself crying at the sound of a human mother singing to her child. This was not war. This was something the Concorde had no name for. On Earth, in a quiet command center buried beneath the Alps, Admiral Mira Kor watched it all unfold on her screens. Phase 2 complete, she said softly. Now, Phase 3. Across the Sol system, human ships finally moved not toward the Concorde fleet, but around it. They formed a wide, slow ring, engines humming at low power. No weapons charged. No shields raised. Instead, they began to transmit. Not data. Not code. Energy. Human engineers had spent decades mastering energy recycling. Now, they reversed the process. They sent clean, stable power pulses toward the Concorde ships, not to overload them, but to recharge them, to heal their drained systems, to say, we could avert you. Instead, we're helping you. One by one, Concorde ships regained power, but their weapons stayed offline. Not disabled, voluntarily locked by their own crews, who no longer saw enemies out there. Fleet Commander Vroll stared at his screen. His ship's main cannon had been converted into a water purifier. It was now pumping clean water into orbiting storage tanks marked with the symbol of a Proxima orphanage. He turned to his second-in-command, a Varelian named Lyra. "What is this?" he asked, voice shaking. "Is this a trick?" Lyra watched a live feed from Proxima Colony. A Concorde soldier sat cross-legged on the grass, learning to braid flowers with a human child. "No," she whispered. "It's an invitation." Then the final act began. From every human habitat, every ship, every station, a single file was transmitted directly into Concorde databases, a file too small to block, too harmless to ignore. It contained no viruses, no traps, just a collection of human knowledge, cures for diseases that had plagued other species for centuries, designs for clean fusion reactors, blueprints for turning radioactive waste into building materials. And the end. A simple note: take what you need. But please, see us as we are. The Concorde Vanguard did not retreat in shame. They did not flee in fear. They simply stopped being an army. Over the next 12 hours, something amazing happened. Concorde soldiers left their ships. They walked among human settlements. They asked questions. They shared stories. A Thalax engineer helped fix a leaking airlock on a school station. A Zenthra medic treated a child's scraped knee with alien antiseptic. No one gave orders. No one demanded surrender. The coercion had failed. Not because humanity fought back with fire, but because they answered force with generosity, fear with understanding, control with trust. Back on the will of unity, Vroll received a personal message. It was from Ambassador Elias Voss. "You came to take our freedom. Instead, we offer you a choice. Stay as conquerors and find nothing worth conquering, or stay as guests and discover everything worth knowing." Vroll looked out his viewport. Human ships floated nearby, lights blinking in friendly patterns. Music drifted through his speakers, soft, human music. Full of hope. He turned off his weapon systems for good. The galaxy had expected humanity to break. Instead, humanity had bent the rules of power itself, and in doing so, they changed everything. The journey back to the Celestial Spire was quiet. Ambassador Elias Voss sat alone in the small cabin of the human shuttle, watching stars drift past the window. Behind him, the Concorde Vanguard fleet followed not as conquerors, but as guests. Their warships now carried human engineers, artists, and doctors aboard, sharing food, stories, and data. No weapons were armed. No threats were made. At the Spire, chaos waited. News of the Vanguard's surrender without battle had spread like lightning through the galactic networks. Species that had never questioned Concorde rule now whispered in dark corners, "If humans could do this, what else is possible?" The 7 thrones of the Concorde sat in tense silence as Voss stepped onto the central platform once more. This time, he was not alone. With him walked a small group, no soldiers, no politicians. A young engineer from Ceres who had helped design the empathy drones, a poet from Lagos whose words now played on Concorde ships, a retired schoolteacher from New Delhi who had taught thousands of children to solve with kindness first. And beside them, to the shock of every elder in the chamber, stood Fleet Commander Vrostil in his Thilax uniform. But without his sidearm, the Cathari Overmind did not speak at first. Its crystalline form pulsed slowly, as if struggling to process what it saw. "You return," it finally said, "not in chains, but with our own enforcer at your side." Voss nodded. "We return not to plead. We return to explain." He stepped forward, and the platform beneath him lit up not with warning energy, but with soft, welcoming light. No one stopped him. "You told us we were broken," Voss said, his voice calm but clear. "You said we burn too fast, that we destroy what we touch. And yes, we've done terrible things. We've hurt our planet. We've hurt each other. We've made war when we should have made peace." He paused, looking around at the towering figures of the Concorde. "But you only saw the fire. You never saw what the fire forged." He gestured to the people behind him. "This is Dr. Arise Thorne. She designed a nanocloud that mapped your fleet's energy patterns, not to attack, but to understand your needs. When your ships lost power, her system sent clean energy back to you. Not because we had to, but because it was right." Dr. Thorne bowed slightly. "Your warp cores run on unstable isotopes. We've known how to stabilize them for 80 years. We sent the schematics to your science divisions this morning." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Varelians exchanged glances. The Gorvath shifted in their stone seats. "And this," Voss continued, "is Kemi Adebayo. She wrote the poem your soldiers heard while stranded near Jupiter. It's about a mother waiting for her child to come home from war. She wrote it after losing her brother in the Mars uprising, not to spread hate, but to say, 'No more.'" Kemi stepped forward. "I didn't write to shame you. I wrote so you'd feel what we feel. Loss, hope, the wish for peace." Then Voss turned to Vrol. "And this is Commander Vrol. He came to take our worlds. But when he saw our children planting trees on dead rock, when he heard our music in his own ship, he chose to see us as people." Vrol stood tall. "I was trained to believe order required control. But what I saw in Sol System was order born of choice, of care, of trust. That is a stronger order than any law." The Overmind was silent for a long time. Then it spoke, not with judgment, but with something new curiosity. "Why did you not fight? You had the means. Your stealth tech, your drones, your AI networks. You could have crippled us." Voss smiled faintly. "Because war solves nothing long-term. You defeat an enemy today, and tomorrow you have a new one. But if you help someone understand you, you might gain a friend for centuries." He reached into his pocket and held up a small silver disc. "This is a copy of everything we sent your fleet. Cures for the Varelian nerve-wasting disease. A fix for the Gorva soil decay. A way to recycle Zenthra hive waste into protein. All free. No strings." Gasps echoed through the chamber. These were problems their best minds had struggled with for generations. "You offer this after we threatened you?" asked a Zenthra elder, her voice trembling. "We offer it," Voss said, "because that's who we are. Not because you deserve it, but because we believe in giving anyway." Then came the hardest truth. "You see us as chaotic," he said. "But chaos is just creation in motion. We try, we fail, we try again. We don't wait for permission to heal, to build, to dream. And yes, sometimes we make mistakes. But we learn, fast." He looked directly at the Overmind. "You demanded we stop AI research. But our AIs aren't slaves or weapons. They're partners. They help design the empathy engines that let your crews feel our joy, our fear, our love. They didn't hack your systems. They asked politely to borrow them, and your own machine said yes. A murmur of disbelief rose. Machines didn't say yes, but they had, because human AIs had been taught ethics before code, compassion before logic. The Concord was silent again. But this silence was different. Not cold, not judgmental, soft, thoughtful. Then, for the first time in recorded history, a member of the Concord broke protocol. The eldest Varelian rose from her throne. Her light fingers glowed with warm gold. "Ambassador Voss," she said, "show us more." And so they did. For 3 days, humans and Concord members met not in the Grand Chamber, but in quiet gardens beneath the spire's upper levels. Human engineers demonstrated how they turned asteroid dust into breathable air. Artists showed how music could calm trauma. Doctors shared how they used neural links not to control minds, but to help stroke patients with learned speech. The Thalax warriors asked shyly about human martial arts, not for combat, but for discipline. The Gorvath requested seeds from Earth's oldest trees, hoping to heal their dying forests. And slowly, the Concord began to change, not all at once, not without resistance. Some still whispered that humanity was dangerous, too wild, too free. But more and more voices spoke of wonder instead of warning. On the 4th morning, the Overmind called a full session. "The decree against humanity," it announced, "is hereby revoked." No cheers, no shouts, just a deep shared breath like a galaxy exhaling after holding its breath for too long. But Voss wasn't done. "You don't need to make us equals," he said. "We don't want special seats or power. But if you're willing, let us help you remember something." "What is that?" the Overmind asked. "That peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of connection." He placed a silver disc on the floor of the platform. "Take our knowledge. Share your own. Let our children learn together. Let our scientists work side by side. Not as ruler and ruled, but as neighbors." The Overmind looked at the disc, then at the humans, then at its own council. And for the first time, it did something no one had ever seen. It lowered its head, just slightly in respect. The message went out that same hour. "The Concord invites humanity to join the galactic community as full partners." But the real victory wasn't in the words. It was in what happened next. A young Cathari apprentice asked a human engineer to teach her how to build a solar harpa, device that turned sunlight into music. A Gorvath elder shared ancient stone carving techniques with a human sculptor. A Zenthra hive sent a request. "Can your empathy engines help us understand our own young? We've lost the way." Humanity hadn't won with weapons. They'd won by being human. And that, it turned out, was more powerful than any fleet in the galaxy. 1 year after the Concord's decree was revoked, the galaxy looked different, not in its stars or ships, but in its spirit. Where once there had been borders, now there were bridges. Human-built empathy engines floated in orbit around major Concord worlds, offering voluntary neural links that let beings from different species feel each other's joy at sunrise, grief at loss, or wonder at a newborn's first breath. At first, only the curious tried them. Then the healers. Then the leaders. Within months, old mistrusts began to soften like ice in warm water. On Proxima B, the very moon the Concord had tried to seize, a new kind of city rose. Not a fortress, not a colony, but a shared home. Human architects worked side by side with Gorvath, stonemasons to build domes that breathed clean air while echoing with Varelian harmonic chants. Thalax engineers helped install solar grids designed by schoolchildren from Nairobi. In the central plaza, a fountain flowed not with water, but with liquid light, shaped by Zenthra artists and human coders together. Every evening, people gathered there, not to debate laws or trade goods, but simply to be together, Among them was a young Cathari girl named Elira. She had been born during the time of the ultimatum, and her earliest memory was watching her parents argue about whether humanity was a threat or a gift. Now, at age 7, she wore a small woven bracelet human style on her left wrist, and her neural crest glowed softly with calm curiosity. She sat beside her human friend, Matteo, on a bench made of recycled ship metal and living moss. Above them, Earth's moon, visible through Proxima B's thin atmosphere, rose slowly over the horizon, pale and gentle. "Do you think they'll ever run out of ideas?" Elira asked, her voice soft like wind through crystal leaves. Matteo, 10 years old and missing 2 front teeth, grinned. "Nah, my grandpa says humans get more ideas when they're scared. And we've been scared a lot." Elira tilted her head. "But you're not scared now." "Not really," he said, pulling a small device from his pocket. It looked like a toy sphere of shifting colors. "This is a thought seed. You think of a problem, and it shows you 10 weird ways to solve it. My class used one to fix the school's water recycler. We turned algae into soap." Elira touched the sphere. It warmed under her fingers and pulsed gently. "It feels kind." "That's the point," Matteo said. "Grandpa says the best human tech isn't about power. It's about care." Across the plaza, Ambassador Elias Voss walked slowly, his steps unhurried. He no longer wore a uniform. Just simple clothes, blue shirt, dark pants like any elder in any culture. He stopped to watch a group of children human, Thalax, and Zenther building a tower out of magnetic blocks that sang when stacked correctly. A voice spoke beside him. "You changed everything," said Fleet Commander Vroll, now serving as Concord liaison for cultural exchange. Voss shook his head. "We didn't change anything. We just reminded everyone what was already possible." Vroll smiled faintly. The Foresoul, the Concord, believed peace meant control. Now we know peace means trust. They walked on, passing gardens where Gorvath elders taught human teens how to read the stars through bone-carved lenses, and human doctors showed Varelians how to grow medicine from fungi that thrived in zero-gravity. Later that week, the first joint research station named Hope's Mirror launched from lunar orbit. Staffed equally by all 8 species, its mission wasn't to mine or map or monitor. It was to answer one question: how can we help each other thrive? Its first project? Using human AI and Cathari resonance fields to stabilize dying stars in the Helix Nebula, not for energy, but to save the ancient coral-like life forms that lived in their outer coronas. Back on Earth, schools no longer taught human history as separate from galactic history. Children learned about the Concord's 1,000-year peace, the Gorvath's forest songs, and the Zenthra's hive poetry just as proudly as they learned about the moon landing or the end of world wars. And in hidden corners, the old ways of fear still whispered. A few Thalax hardliners plotted in the dark. A small Gorvath sect refused all human contact. But their voices grew quieter, drowned out by the daily acts of shared life, of bread broken together, of songs sung in mixed tongues, of hands working side by side to build something new. True shock to the Galactic Concord hadn't been humanity's weapons or speed or even their courage. It had been their generosity. They had been given a choice: obey or be crushed. Instead, they chose to understand. And in doing so, they gave the galaxy back to itself. One evening, high above the clouds of Xylos Prime, the celestial spire's crystals glowed with a new color, not blue, not gold, but soft green, like young leaves after rain. It was a color the spire had never shown before. The Cathari Overmind watched it from its chamber and finally understood. Humanity did not seek to rule the galaxy. They sought to heal it, and they were already succeeding, not with speeches or treaties, but with a million small acts of kindness creativity, and connection. Far away, on a quiet asteroid near the edge of known space, an old human freighter named Steadfast drifted. Its pilot, Rena Cho, the same woman who flew Voss to the Spire a year ago, sat in the cockpit, watching a data stream from Hope's mirror. On her screen, a message blinked. Star stabilization successful. Coral bloom detected. Species expressing what we believe is joy. She smiled, leaned back and played an old Earth song, something slow, something warm. Outside, the stars burned as they always had. But now, they burned a little brighter, because somewhere in the dark, a species that once crawled from caves, fought its own shadows, and dreamed of the sky, had finally taught the galaxy how to hope. And that was enough.